A couple of questions that we like folks to ask themselves is, have you ever wished that you could go back to a previous version of a label that you wanted to be able to see, to print, to view? Do you want to see what changes were made over time on a particular label? Or, as I mentioned before, go back and print a version of a label that you no longer have available to you? Would you like to have an easy way to save label changes without having to create another file or to create another label or to have a different naming convention? Have you needed a more structured approach in moving labels from your development environment into a production environment? And one of the last questions to ask is have you needed to ensure that your development labels don't accidentally escape into your production environment so that you always know that you're printing the label that you expect? If you ask yourselves these questions and answers to any of them are yes, label versioning is probably for you. So with label versioning, it brings a whole new level to Loftware Label Manager and Loftware Print Server because it now gives you the ability to view, preview, edit, print, and actually retrieve different versions of a label template. So with label versioning, you can now get to version 2 of a label, get to version 5 of a label, assuming that you have versioning turned on. And in this way, you again can see everything that you want to see for a label over time. And with the power of label versioning coupled with a Loftware Print Server, you now have the ability to print different versions of that label depending on your business needs. In most cases, customers will be using the default behavior, which is you always print and use the latest and greatest label that you have in your system. But in some particular environments, there might be specific customer requirements that say you need to always print a certain label for a certain part, while at the same time you want to evolve your other customers for a new and improved template. We give you that ability to handle those situations and more. The other thing that's key to label versioning is easily moving and copying labels between environments. Many of our customers have an environment set up where their label designers are working and creating label templates, and they go through an approval process and then migrate that label over to the production environment. So with label versioning, we've now given an easy, simplified workflow to migrate that label from your development environment to your production environment simply and easily. So one caveat or one note that I want to make here is that label versioning is not a approval workflow. After talking with our customers, it was clear that we needed to differentiate between versioning and workflow, and that many customer best practices are to leverage an existing workflow system outside of the applications. And so our solution here allows us to manage within your existing workflow environment. So what's important with label versioning? What is the value? Ultimately, we believe that label versioning will save you both time and money. And why do we believe this? The first is being able to reduce errors and rework. With label versioning, you now have the ability to see what changed and what was changed by whom over time. And so you now have that history of the label that traditionally you wouldn't have available to you. And in the case that you have somebody that's moving forward on label design and they're saving it, and you discover that, well, they didn't quite make the right change or they misread the spec, you have the ability to recover previous versions as needed. So the amount of rework that you have to do or time that was invested in a label or having to guess what changes are made, all of that goes away with label versioning. The other aspect that saves you time and money, especially in your production environment, is that you can reduce overall your labeling risks because you now have greater control of your printing environment. With part of the feature called instance name checking, you have the ability to prevent labels being printed into an environment that it wasn't intended. Or put a different way, if you have a development label that ended up getting copied over manually outside of your normal processes onto a production environment, we have checks in place that will actually prevent that label from being printed. The other aspect of labeling risks is that we've removed the manual process of being able to deploy labels from your development environment into your production environment.